This is a Muscle Cat Media production.
Weekend Pickoff time here on the Expats, where we get you set for a big weekend of Major League Baseball. Some good series this weekend, actually, as Dodgers travel to the Bronx. Really interested in that series out west. Dodgers traveling to Petco Park. Even that Guardians-Rangers series has a little bit of interest from an AL wildcard standpoint. And here to help us break it all down, as he always does on a Friday, a man of many nicknames, but today we'll call him National Rugby League Overs God, Reese Columbus. Spoon, how are you, my friend?
I'm very, very good. Thanks to the last-minute try and conversion by the Rabbitohs last night. And like we talked about, when I knew it was going to be over 39.5, I probably didn't have 40-0 on the bingo card, but we take it. And if that is going to be the drought buster that translates over to some baseball success, I will be very happy.
For those wondering what the hell we're talking about, you can look it up. The South Sydney Rabbitohs and the St. George Illawarra Dragons playing at a mud-drenched Accor Stadium, I guess they're calling it now, in the west of Sydney. I don't know. It changes names every 5 seconds. Spoon liked the number that he saw, and he took it. It was over 39.5, and I think the 40th point was over the crossbar with 2 minutes left to go. So it doesn't matter how far you win by, Spoon, as long as you win it. So you're coming in hot, even though it's not a baseball pick. You're coming in hot into the weekend, which I think is a good omen.
To translate the line, I guess, I sort of use the example to you. It's like a 6.5 in a baseball game, or like a 7.0 when you're like, okay, I know there's reasons for this. And in last night's case, it was the weather. And usually that can be the case in baseball, or it's, two aces on the mound. But it's such a low total that you're like, I kind of have to take it. You can get caught with your hands in the cookie jar a little bit, but fortunately not the case here.
It was a fun watch. Hopefully you stay hot. Look, I want to chat to you about some of this stuff that's popping up pre-CBA that's not going to take effect. Well, some of it may take effect potentially next year, but a lot of it 2027. But before we do that, I guess because we have to, look, I'm not really excited about it, but we probably should update the listeners on what's happening in the Destiny Draft. For those that didn't listen on Monday, we did our third Destiny Draft where Spoon cracks open 2 fresh packs of Topps baseball cards. We go snake order draft and basically pick a team of 3 players, a hitter, a pitcher, and a utility. Eric's won it both times. I finished second both times. Spoon has finished third both times. Let's leave me out of it because I've been atrocious in this version of the Destiny Draft. Spoon, you're currently leading, but as you showed us in a meme yesterday, objects in the mirror may be closer than they appear, and that object in the mirror is one Eric Ballnar.
Yeah, I mean, look, to give yourself credit, you've been the Diamond Dynasty sort of Destiny Draft guinea pig here. Like you took a closer, you've taken a catcher, you've gotten very creative, and ultimately that helps us understand the game that we've created even more.
Creative GMs usually don't last very long at their specific organizations. There have been very few creative, quote-unquote, GMs that have lasted for a long time. So it's a nice way of you saying,
it helps that you're
lift your game or you're going to get replaced.
I can't see you firing yourself anytime soon, although I'm in another draft like that and you might be in your own hot seat. But yeah, look, I appreciate the creativity. It hasn't paid off this round, but you do have a couple of silver medals, and even if I win this week and you come last, we're going to be tied on points anyway. I'm going to have to go back and do a tiebreaker on total points scored, which you'll probably win thanks to your strong week 1. Yeah, look, Eric's been chipping away big time, and the question mark is obviously going to be, how is that Brian Wu start going to go? Witt Jr. has been amazing for him. Trout hasn't done a lot. He's got 13 between those two, with 10 being Witt and 3 being Trout. But the Wu start is going to really make or break his week. Currently sitting on 13 points. I'm on 15 thanks to 9 from Skeens, 6 from Singer, and 0 from Jeremy Pena, who is batting 300 and has managed 2 hits in 4 or 5 days, 2 strikeouts for a grand total of 0 points. The benefit I've got is 2 more starts from a couple of quality pitchers. I mean, one guy's going to probably win the Cy Young, but Brady Singh is quite serviceable too. but that's going to be about the bulk of my scoring left. So it's going to be interesting. It's been a fun round, and it's kind of, we've been locking horns from a long way out.
Look, I've been going back in my mind, and I'd let the people know that, like, when you're on the clock for 30 seconds or whatever it is, I don't know that we've actually designated a real time. We're going to actually put some structure around this next year and do it properly. You do get really flustered. Like, whenever you're calling out the names of the players that you're pulling from the packs, you start to go, all right, he's on my short list, he's on my short list, he's on my short list. But then whenever you get in it, because it's, it may be a guy that you haven't thought about in 2, 3, 4 weeks or all season. And on the periphery, you've been like, okay, maybe this guy's been going well. Let's see who they're playing this week quickly. Let's see if they'll get 2 starts, if they're a pitcher. How hot have they been? That sort of thing. And that's where I got bit, right? I mean, I think Eric's put the clip up on social media today of me choosing Michael McGreevy first overall. And, like, it was obvious hard overhead. But when I looked it up, he was starting the next day. And then I just looked quickly to see if the Cardinals had a Thursday game, because usually if they have a Thursday game, that means that it'll be a 4-game series on the weekend. So I was like, right, that means McGreevy will start Tuesday and he'll start Sunday. I like him. I think he'll pitch well against the Marlins, which came to fruition. A couple of pitches late in that game probably took a few points away from me. But I think my outlook would be much different if he was getting that extra start. And the reason why he's not getting that extra start is because there's no Saturday game in Tampa, because the Bucks and the Bills are playing a preseason game. So if I do finish last, and it's by a few points. I mean, look, let's say Mason Wynn and Logan O'Hoppe have big weekends, and I finished last by 2 or 3 points, and it's because of that reason. I'm never going to forgive myself. But that's what happens when you're on the hot seat. It's just so difficult to get that level of information.
Full disclosure, I think if you go back and listen to the draft, as I was kind of flustered myself, I was like, I can't see Brady Singer starts anywhere. I don't know if he's going to start. I was looking at Kansas City Royals games, like completely blanked on the fact that he's now a Red. And then the next day,
and was starting the next day.
I'm like, oh, cool, he's starting. So, like, not only is he going to make 1 start, he's going to make 2. But it's sometimes better to be lucky than good.
Yes, you've done the opposite of me. Anyways, a big weekend, and I think Mike Trout and Bobby Witt might potentially feature for some prop bets for us a little bit later today. Look, before we get into the picks, there's been a lot of talk, and I think the reason because that is because Rob Manfred has just been like this Seinfeld character the last 2-3 months, where he's just going on talk shows and he's coming out in public places, at various events, and just saying all this outrageous stuff. Like, the first was with the broadcast rights, when it was like ESPN's out. Everybody thought that was weird. Now the news is coming out that potentially ESPN is going to have the rights to all out-of-market digital games. Are going to have potentially the rights to 5 in-markets. Apple's out. Netflix is coming in. NBC is coming in. The broadcast rights looks like for next year they could be all over the place. And it's speculating a little bit, so maybe we park that until we know a little bit more. But the one that's really gathered a lot of momentum this week, and it's been talked about a lot over the last couple of years, and I think hurtling toward not only the new CBA, but also the potential for expansion, be it in Charlotte, Nashville, Portland, Austin, wherever that's going to be. I mean, it sounds inevitable that there's going to be 2 new teams at some point in the next half decade to decade in Major League Baseball, which is going to not only probably be the end of the 162-game schedule, but probably be the end of the National League and American League, at least the divisions as we know it. I've seen it. I mean, it doesn't, if you scroll social media for 5 minutes, you'll see 17 different people's proposals about what alignment should look like. And the one thing that I'm worried about is, and look, I think Major League Baseball has probably seen a little bit of this with the balance schedule that they've gone to, is that you don't see enough rivalry games anymore. Like, the Yankees and Red Sox are playing each other this weekend, but we don't see, I know we used to complain about them playing each other all the time. You don't see it enough. Cardinals and Cubs. I mean, the Cardinals played their first game at Wrigley like 2 weeks ago, and like that shouldn't happen, right? Although we're getting good Dodgers Padres games at the back end of the season, we haven't seen much of that at the beginning of the season. So I just wonder if some of that was experimentation to say, can we do this? Are we going to lose this regional rivalry? If anything, I think the balanced schedule has shown how important regional rivalries are. And maybe that strengthens the argument for realignment and keeping a lot of these regional teams together. No one knows what's going to happen, right? But I do think it's a fascinating conversation to start thinking about what is the baseball landscape going to look like in, say, 2027 and beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, like as it stands, there's already some weird kind of alignment. Like the Astros probably come to mind as a West team. And then we're about to have, an A's team moving to Vegas. Like, I think they probably needed to do some tinkering at some point anyway, so that they're maybe kicking the can down the road as long as they can until it makes sense to do it all at once. I guess the obvious thought is it's got to be 8 divisions of 4, right? Like not dissimilar to how the NFL do it. But I guess, who you put in where, and are there going to be some teams crossing over from the NL to the AL? Because if you're going to go 8 divisions of 4, should the Mets and the Yankees, for example, be in the same division to sort of get more of those maybe rivalry games that you're sort of talking about? Or what does that look like? I mean, I think it's going to be one of those ones where there's no right answer. It's going to upset a lot of people, especially like your purists who have already, not that I'm sort of on board with that, but strongly disliked a lot of the changes that have come in over the last few years, like a pitch clock and that sort of thing. I'm sure for some people it'll be the last straw. But it's, like you said, I think inevitable that we do get to 32 teams. But that said, I wouldn't like to see it go any more beyond that, I don't think.
Well, and it wasn't, like for baseball traditionalists, it wasn't that long ago where the Milwaukee Brewers were inexplicably in a 6-team NL Central and the AL West was 4 teams, right? It wasn't that long ago where that was a thing. So with this, like this traditionalist argument, I don't necessarily understand, because it's like, well, the divisions have changed. Like over time, we have to evolve in those sorts of things. But I mean, do you agree with me in the sense that you feel like there haven't been enough of those rivalry games take place? I mean, I'm sure as a Diamondbacks fan, you hate to see the Dodgers and the Padres so much, the Giants when they're good. You probably would like to see more of Colorado. But have you missed that a little bit? I know that I've missed. I mean, even seeing the Pirates, not as much. And certainly with the Cubs, because the Cardinals-Cubs rivalry is, albeit a friendly one, it's such a series steeped in history, and it always means so much to beat the Cubs. Have you missed that, do you think, with this new balanced schedule?
Was it from like 23 to 13 or something like that? Like it was quite drastic. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but it feels like it was something in the low 20s, where by the time you played all 4 teams in your division, that made up over half of your schedule, to what it is now, where I think it's about a third of your schedule or maybe even less. Maybe there's a middle ground there. I think to your point around, it's a shame when some of these games start popping up now when the fate of some teams has sort of been decided. Like I'm not sure if there's an avenue to explore. A lot of these divisional games take place before the deadline, because you want every win's kind of worth 2 when you're in a divisional race, right? But then when you do get to the deadline, you typically are a buyer or a seller. So it doesn't make a lot of sense now to be having these games that are worth 2 when, I know a win is a win, but a win in August is very different to a win in April. So maybe that's the compromise is, yes, there's less of the games, but we kind of front load them a little bit to, keep the stakes high, because it's fortunate that, the Padres and the Dodgers are still in the hunt and they're great teams, but it could just as easily be, the D-backs and the Dodgers this year, which historically over the last couple of years have been like some great sort of contest between sort of playoff hopeful teams. But this year the D-backs are running out like AAA guys.
Well, the other interesting aspect of it to me is, and the NBA gets this right, and probably the NHL does to an extent, is because you have an Eastern Conference and a Western Conference, before the teams meet in the finals, everything is kind of geo-locked in a sense. One of the interesting points that Rob Manfred made that I guess I never really thought about in the context of baseball was, say the Mets and the Padres play each other in the first round of the playoffs. When they play in San Diego, they lose a massive viewership on the East Coast because it's just so late at night. And so when you think about teams from the East Coast playing teams from the West Coast in early postseason games, the loss that they get in eyeballs, just simply because, it may be midnight East Coast time. Now, if you're a diehard Mets fan and they're in the playoffs, you're going to stay up, you're going to watch that game, right? But really in no other sport in North America would you get a matchup like that in the early playoff rounds. And it's something that I guess I never really considered. So, if they do look at, if they say again,
there's an easy solution.
Yeah, I mean, the American League becomes, the MLB East, and the National League becomes MLB West. I mean, it basically become East and West if you want to keep the traditional names of the National League and the American League. I think you do that. A lot of the proposals I've seen are basically just rejigging the current divisions, but I had never really thought about it in that instance. And when you talk about it, I mean, the broadcast is king in all sports, and in baseball especially. And once you get to the postseason, if you're losing eyeballs simply because of geography, it does sort of strengthen that argument. Yes, it's one instance and it's at the end of the season, but it's meant to be the crown jewel of the sport, right? So for me, that's kind of the argument that's putting it over the line.
I've got a suggestion. I mean, pitchers would hate it, but it works for your time zone problem and would make the games quite entertaining. Just play every single playoff game at Coors. Like every single playoff game. It's the central time zone, right? Like, I don't know, what is it, mountain time or something like that?
Mountain time, yeah.
But it is that in-between kind of time slot where it's not West Coast or East Coast. And like we get to watch the best of the best score 13 runs every single night. It sounds unreal.
So it's like MLB or NRL Magic Round, AFL Gather Round.
Yeah,
but you're doing it in the postseason, and you're playing it
random.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. So you're gonna send every single team to Denver. Look, I mean, it's out there. I mean, people tune into the expats because they want Spoon's crazy takes. That's definitely one of them. It's something I can honestly say it's something that I have not seen anyone else propose. So those are only the kind of takes that you get here at Baseball Expats. Before we move on to the picks, though, your feeling about, are we hurtling toward a lockout with this salary cap stuff? And it kind of does feel like Rob Manfred against the players and against the Players Association. We'll probably know more this offseason, but where's your gut at with that at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, like what was it, a few weeks ago, the Manfred versus Harper thing was pretty telling, right? Like some of the quotes that came out of that. I guess it's important to remember that Manfred is just the puppet for the 30 owners, right? So he's a mouthpiece of whatever they want. They employ him, and that he sort of acts on their wishes. So yeah, look, it reminds me a lot of 2020 and the pandemic. And look, we got a 60-game season in, which fortunately wasn't enough games to mean that whoever won that year could call it a real championship. But I think baseball missed a huge opportunity there to be the only sport, and almost get a full season in. And these sort of like semi-lockout discussions meant that we only got that 60 games, which, sure, it was better than nothing. But given the no-contact nature and the ability to just kind of like pick up and play like they did, I think baseball could have had a 150-game season if these two sides weren't so far apart. And those gaps clearly haven't been bridged. And there's grievances from players with the situations around like Sacramento at the moment, and little things like that. You can just feel it like boiling. And yeah, the Dodgers paying whatever they want to sort of build the Avengers has increased calls for a salary cap, and players won't take that without a salary floor. And that's really what a lot of this sort of boils down to. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be an interesting 12 to 18 months in Major League Baseball. I mean, I think we all hope that the two sides will be able to put their differences aside for the sake of the fans, because it really does feel like Major League Baseball has some momentum back. It feels like they've gotten the marketing right. Hopefully this new broadcast deal doesn't hinder things too much. If ESPN does get the rights, maybe they can at least be working on opening day, which MLB TV had some issues with this year. But it's just interesting that it's, a time of the year, and probably because there's not a lot of meaningful baseball being played in terms of divisional races right now, that a lot of the chat is about what does the future of Major League Baseball look like. Well, look, by now listeners have probably noticed that they have just heard mine and your voice. They haven't heard Eric's voice. He is, as he calls it, to use his own words, phoning it in this weekend. The guy's always going on trips somewhere. Like, he'll do 18-hour trips to who knows where. Remember that time that he was just in a log cabin one time whenever we were talking to him? Like, he'll just appear random places.
That was the Maple Leafs fault.
So look, who knows what he's dealing with and what he's going through right now. But he has been nice enough to send in some tips. So, Spoon, before we get to yours, we will throw it to Eric and see what he's got for the listeners this weekend.
Fellas, Eric here. I'm phoning it in. I'm currently unavailable right now on a little trip, but always got to make some time to drop a couple picks and make sure I'm part of the action. Someone's got to carry the weight. So I've got two plays for you. Hopefully Spoon didn't conflict with any of these ones I've got. And some of them are a little bit different today. And I'm going to start with, what they say is the best rivalry in baseball. I'm looking at that Red Sox-Yankees series, and this should be a great one. Obviously, they're right around the same records as each other. Should be a great kind of, battle for playoff positioning. Where do people want to go? Who's going to be in a dogfight for the wild card? Who's going to be trying to push for that division? But I'm looking at this Yankees roster, and I'm looking at the Boston Red Sox starter and pitching matchup. Now, Spoon might have some feedback about whether this should be a player performance double or not, but I'm looking at Brian Bayo. So Bayo this year is having an okay season, but I'm looking at his strikeout total for this game, and his line is set at 4.5 strikeouts, and you're getting 2s to hit the overs. Now, Bayo has necessarily been a strikeout machine this year. However, against this current Yankees roster, he's had just over 100 plate appearances and a 30% strikeout rate. I really like that if you're getting a 4.5 line and you're getting 2s, double your money for him to strike out the New York Yankees, who have one of the highest strikeout numbers in the league. 5 isn't outrageous. He doesn't even need to have a great start. He only had 2 strikeouts the last time he was out in 6 innings pitched. So, he's a bit more of a ground ball guy, one of the better ones in the league. But the New York Yankees are ranked 26th in strikeouts, and Bayo over his career, 30% strikeout rate against this current Yankees roster. So for those reasons, Bayo over 4.5 at 2s. Now, one tip we haven't done too much this year, rather, is looking at the run line and the money line. So the run line means basically, for all the new ones out there, you basically give a 1.5 margin to the other team. So effectively, you are betting on a team to win by 2 runs or more. And I'm looking at the Rangers and Guardians game. Now, I've been high on the Rangers, and maybe wrongly, because they just aren't making that charge. But one guy who's been a profitable option this year is Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi this year has been excellent. And after a small slump versus the Diamondbacks, he was great versus the Jays last week on that Sunday cap. When the Rangers needed a win the most, they send their ace out there, the guy who stops everything through it, and he goes 7 innings, allowing 2 runs with 6 strikeouts. So he's been a really good option as sort of that showstopper, if you want to look at it this way. Now, the Texas Rangers need to win. Like, that is sort of where we're at right now. So I am going to make a play on the Texas Rangers to win, but on the money, on the run line rather. So that means that they need to win by 1.5 runs or more. So effectively 2 runs or more. Now, Slade Cecconi has sort of struggled lately. He allowed 6 runs out in his last outing and 11 over his last 2. So I think you have a great opportunity to look at a team's ace versus a pitcher that is really, really struggling in a game that the Texas Rangers simply have to have. So for $2.30 return, I am going the Rangers on the run line. Now, I know we're also doing our little home run plays, and I got to go with my guy in the Destiny draft, Mike Trout. He is due for the long ball. I want to see it happen. It's got to be interesting. Currently, I'm 2 points behind Spoon. I got Brian Wu going tomorrow. Bobby Witt Jr. is going to keep plucking along with 2 hits, a couple runs, and an RBI. And we might even see a 3-run home run from Mike Trout. And you might see me in the lead at the end of the Destiny draft standings tomorrow. It's a bit of a dogfight. Anyways, fellas, that's all I got for you. Have a good one. That's my message from Balnar. Out.
Yeah, I really like the Bayo pick. Eric dropped in the group chat that that's where he was going, and I kind of metaphorically scrunched up some paper because I had some notes on that. And yeah, Eric's kind of hit all the key points. I think I'm pretty excited to watch that one, and I do think it's a ladder opportunity as well because there's good value even at that sort of 7 or 8 strikeout mark, and it won't surprise to see him get that. I mean, Rosie, you and I talked earlier in the year about Bayo, and he's just continued to have this like really, really underrated season. Like, I don't see him get talked about at all as one of baseball's better pitchers this year, but he's got a 3.23 ERA. Picked up a couple of WAR, started the season late with some injuries. Like, he's just been, I know he's kind of behind Crochet, and Crochet's in the Cy Young race, so that's probably why. And, typically SP2s don't dominate headlines, but he's been brilliant.
Yeah, I was surprised looking at it after Eric sent that through that in the 21 starts that he has, as good as he's been, and look, pitcher WAR to me sometimes doesn't feel right. I rate WAR really highly, when it comes to offensive players, and obviously when it adds in defensive WAR. But like his WAR of 1.8, I'm with you. It doesn't feel high enough for how good he's been. And like without him, are the Red Sox where the Red Sox are? Probably not. So it seems really low. And that to me, whenever you look at that number and you go 1.8, I would expect that to maybe be 2.8, 2.5 at least. You know what I mean? It does really feel like he's had sort of an under the radar season.
I think WAR, from what I understand about pitcher WAR, it takes into account a lot the quality of the defense you've got around you. And I think the Red Sox have been quite good in that department, which kind of hurts him. Like if you compare that to Christopher Sanchez, who's having a brilliant season as well. His ERA is 2.5 compared to the 3.2 for Bayo. His WAR is 6.2 because the Phillies defense hasn't been good, and you've got like Castellanos and Schwarber out there in the outfield. So I think it takes that into account. I'm not scientific enough to tell you how, but yeah, you're right that it doesn't seem to reflect how good, in what really is just a one-on-one matchup, pitcher versus hitter, how good Brian Bayo has been this season.
Well, and I mean, look at the defense behind it
too.
The defense is that new model that Boston's going with of getting these young guys, signing them, and you hope they're really good value at the end of that contract. And yeah, you identified him really early in the season. He's had a great year, so I'm excited to watch that series. So I'm glad that you and Eric align on that because that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll move on to mine. Eric stole my pick, so I'm going to attack his team. Seems only fair to sort of retaliate in that fashion. Really interesting one tomorrow, I think, to watch is Shane Bieber making his first start for the Blue Jays. Now, I love Shane Bieber, and we talk about the 2020 COVID season. I made a lot of money betting his strikeouts during that season. He had a 14.2 K rate, and he won the Cy Young. He was phenomenal to watch, and his strikeout line was always like 6.5, but he'd routinely have 8, 9, 10. And that was a great time when, like I mentioned before, there wasn't a lot of sport to watch, but you knew Shane Bieber was going to make you money every 5 days. So I say all this because he's got a soft spot in my heart. But for me, he's been very much a candidate of potentially sticky stuff fraud, just as far as when they made the changes they did to Spider Tack and all that kind of stuff, his spin rate dropped incredibly. His strikeout rate dropped from 12s, 13s his whole career to under 1 per inning. That didn't necessarily translate to like poor performance. His ERA has been stellar his whole career. But in modern baseball, even now more than 3 years ago, if you're not missing bats and the spin rate's there, your margin for error, I guess, is probably less than it ever has been. I think Zach Gallen's been a great example of that this year, like spin rate down, not missing bats, and when they get hit hard. So with all that kind of said, I know he's making his first start. He made some rehab starts. I'm pretty keen to take him on tomorrow just with a Miami Marlins team total. You can get over 3.5 for the Marlins team total at $2.20, which is really good value. I would wait a little bit longer, see what Sportsbet and Bet365 put up because they didn't have theirs yet since Miami hadn't posted or announced their starting pitcher. But $2.20 at 3.5 for the Fish, I think is really nice value. In the month of August, they've had their best OPS plus as a team, and they are just sticking around. And I mean, you saw it this week with your Cardinals. They've been a frustrating kind of team to get outs against. And I think they're going to get probably 9 innings because the Jays are going to put on a lot of runs. And if we're asking for 4 runs from a team that's got a lot of fast, exciting, high contact players against a starting pitcher that is going to need to show a fair bit to get that rotation spot come October, I think $2.20 is a really nice price to find out. Yeah,
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, just watching that, a very, very young team, right? Like, we talked about in the group chat that I think Sandy Alcantara is the only player that they have signed on a major league contract for next year, which is absurd when you think about it. They've got a lot of guys that obviously will go through arbitration again and those sorts of things and still have more years of team control. But you would think that a team like that, and in the past Marlins teams like that, have just been so brutal to watch. But this team has got so many fun rookies that half of them, or probably a majority of them, aren't going to be Marlins in the next 5 years. And it could be that we look back at this team and go, holy cow, this guy, they were all on the same team. Like, that's unbelievable. Like, how many times does that happen with the Marlins, right? When you think about Yelich and Giancarlo Stanton being on the same team, for instance, you just go, oh my goodness gracious. And I think Marcelo Zuna was on that team as well. Like,
Zuna, was it 2019, I reckon?
So you think back at like those Marlins teams when you just go, my goodness, what could have been? But that ownership group's not going to spend, et cetera, et cetera. That's a whole nother can of worms that we can get into, but it's something that I really noticed, during the week watching them play St. Louis. It's a team that's got a lot of fight. They take the extra base. They're not afraid to rattle a pitcher and attempt steals here, there, and everywhere. So, it could potentially be. And, Shane Bieber making his first start in those types of conditions, though the dome was, or the roof was closed, it still really feels like it's a hot, muggy, humid place to pitch. And probably, he's coming back. There's not going to be a ton of atmosphere. It could go either way. You know what I mean? It could go completely pear-shaped for him early, to where the Marlins, who have had a propensity to score early in games this year as well, could put up, 2-3 runs in the first inning. If they do that, you're sitting pretty.
Yeah, and I also think there's a world where, he can look great, but he only goes 2 or 3 innings. And then the Jays being the Jays could be 5, 6, 7 runs up. And all of a sudden you're going like a middle relief, a long relief guy, but a low leverage guy because you've probably got the game in control. And then you're really at the sort of lower level of the bullpen there, and you're asking a Miami team to just tack on 4 runs in 9 innings. At 220, I'm pretty happy that way. I just went and found the team you're talking about. That JT Realmuto as well, who picked up 4.5 WAR that season.
Ridiculous. Who was there? Were there any pitchers of note on that team, just while we're talking about it?
Jose Urena was their best by WAR. Dan Straley, Adam Conley. No, to answer your question.
Yeah, okay.
But 8.1
no is a complete sentence, Spoon. It's fine.
8.1 WAR for Stanton, 5.7 for Ozuna, 4.5 Real Muto, 3.7 Yelich, 3.7 D Gordon. How many games do you reckon that team won?
70.
77. Finished second in the East.
That's so crazy. Good grief. So, it could happen. We could be sitting here 6 years from now calling out these guys' names and going, remember?
Iowa Stout was a Red Sox legend.
Yeah, they'll all be somewhere else because it's typical Marlins. But I think it's a good pick against a guy coming back who has ability, but who knows what you're going to see out of him tomorrow. And if he only throws 50 pitches, and look, there's a real chance that Toronto could be up 16-0 in the 6th inning, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is pitching in the 7th, right? And if that's the case, then you want to be on over 3.5 Marlins runs.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, usually with team totals, I like the away team because you're guaranteed those 9 innings, but I think it's pretty safe to say here there should be a bottom of the 9th. My second one, pretty straightforward play. A lot of my guys, and by my guys I mean like strikeout pitchers that I'm fond of, aren't anywhere to be seen tomorrow except for Bayo, which Eric already stole. So instead of a player performance double with, a juicy kind of price, I just found a game I think is going to go over, and the line is only 8.5. And I'm talking the Twins and the White Sox, a couple of miserable AL Central teams. They've got a starter, Zebby Matthews, for the Twins, 5.06 ERA. For the White Sox, Savali goes around with a 4.88 ERA. At this time of the season, what you see is what you get with ERA. And August and September, there's enough of a sample size there that these guys are what we think they are and what they show they are, especially with the sort of amount of innings that they've pitched. There's still runs to be had in these teams. Like the Twins kind of gutted their roster, and we know that was, in as part of a plan to try and sell the team, which they've failed to do anyway. But you've still got guys like Byron Buxton and, Larnach and some genuine power hitters there. And they've been putting up some decent scores of late. They put 8 runs on the Tigers a couple of days ago. So I think there's runs there. And it's a similar story for the White Sox. There's some names there that it probably hasn't worked out for, like Luis Robert and that sort of thing. But when they get a hold of it, they still hit it a long way. So I'll take the 8.5 at $1.95. Not going to get too cute with it because I think that's one where just 1 or 2 big innings and, some ugly pitching, some questionable fielding will put a crooked number up and get us a collect.
Well, at least if you're going to force the listeners to watch the White Sox this weekend, you've gone for the over, unlike Eric barracking for the under. Well, it did get up last weekend, so if you did follow Eric in on under in the Royals-White Sox games, I'm sure you wanted to gouge your eyes out by the time it was finished. But, you would have gotten paid. You would have doubled your money, so a winner is a winner. Look, Eric also gave us his home run tip for tomorrow, and look, I think there's a little bit of self-interest in that tip. He's tipping that Mike Trout will go deep tomorrow. I'm not even sure who is Anaheim playing. They're playing the Cubs at home tomorrow, so Eric hoping that Mike Trout goes deep, both for his pockets and for his Destiny draft team. And Spoon, I'm going to do something that's a little bit disgusting here. I'm going to take his second Destiny Draft offensive player in Bobby Witt Jr. If this happens, it's going to be disastrous for you from a Destiny Draft standpoint. But his numbers against Casey Mize are just too hard to ignore. So, I mean, he's 6 for 14 in his career with 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, and 17 plate appearances. Slugging 1,000, OPS nearly 1,600. And, you know, with divisional rivals, these guys would have seen each other enough. That's a big enough sample size and a head-to-head for mine between 2 guys in the same division. And I think Bobby Witt Jr. was somewhere around $5 or $5.50. And he's swinging a red-hot bat right now, too, right? So I just got to look at it. And when you couple the price in with it, for me, it was a bit too absurd to not take. So thoughts and prayers for you and your Destiny Draft team, but I will take Bobby Witt Jr. to potentially go deep tomorrow.
That's okay. I'll put a few dollary dues on it, and that way I've emotionally hedged either way. I'll bring home our sort of trifecta there with the game I just talked about, and you know, probably the guy, the face of this team that's left, especially if they let Joe Ryan go next year. Byron Buxton, I think it doesn't need too much explaining. He, for me, is genuinely one of the biggest what ifs in baseball over the last 5 years. Just like his inability to stay healthy, but he is a true 5-tool player, like to the same extent as an Acuna or someone like that. He's got an unbelievable cannon, unbelievable glove. He can run, he can hit for power. Like he's an excitement machine. And it's a shame they never built the right sort of team around him. I mean, the most games he's played 140 games in 2017. He played 102 in 2024. And scattered in there are like 28 home runs in 2022 in just 92 games. Like he should have had a 40 home run season. It's just his body's kind of let him down. He's $3.80 tomorrow against Savali, who I think he's going to be able to get some nice swings off against. And in a game that I think there'll be some runs, I'm looking for probably the one star that's really in this matchup between both teams tomorrow to get the job done.
That's a pretty easy home run trifecta to cheer for, I think, in Trout, Witt Jr., and Byron Buxton. I agree with you, Byron Buxton. It'll be interesting to see what happens the rest of his career. I mean, he's only 31 years of age, right? So if he can stay healthy, his 162-game average, his WAR, is 5.5. He's never had a season that good because he's never been able to stay healthy.
But started playing at 21. Yeah, he could have been genuinely Hall of Fame pace.
Yeah, I mean that's and there was so much hype around him whenever he did come up. I mean, playing in Minnesota probably hasn't done him any favors, right? But it's he's such an easy guy to cheer for. And even I remember on opening day when the Cardinals played Minnesota, he was the type of guy that you were just like, yeah, Byron Buxton is the type of guy that even being on the opposing team, you're happy to cheer for.
He had 4.9 WAR in 61 games in 2021. Like that's absurd. That's like a 12 WAR season pace.
It will be interesting to see with everything that's happening with that ownership group in Minnesota, what happens. Because if you can put him in the right situation for 2 or 3 seasons in a team that needs him and a team that's genuinely competing, I would love to see what happens with the Byron Buxton. He's contracted for the next 3 years, 26, 27, and 28 at $15 million a season. I think somebody would take that on. I definitely think somebody would take that on. If you're getting a 162-game average of a 5.5 WAR for a 32-year-old Byron Buxton next year, or maybe even in the offseason, I think somebody's going to take that on.
I think he's a perfect Phillies target, right? Like if Schwarber, Castellanos, I think those guys are both out of contract. He just fits that mold of like, all right, we're going to DH you some days, we're going to put you in the outfield some days, but you are. He's got Philly written all over him, I think.
And he's going to homer tomorrow. So what a guy! He's going to fill our pockets.
He's going to homer twice tomorrow.
He's going to homer twice tomorrow. And Mike Trout and Bobby Witt Jr. are going to follow him. We'll certainly hope that you got something out of that today. Hope you enjoy your baseball on the weekend. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share the podcast. If you're enjoying what we're doing, Eric will be back with us on Monday. It'll be our 50th episode. Spoon, where has the time gone? 50th episode on Monday, and that doesn't include the lost episodes.
Yeah, for some of us celebrated their 50th today, but it was a very lonely birthday party. Had to blow my own candles and light them and everything. It was, miserable.
There was a few Spoon solo episodes that didn't get published earlier in the year. So Spoon's already on 50, but as a collective, the Baseball Expats will have our 50th episode on Monday. We'll hope you join us. But certainly hope you enjoy the weekend and enjoy your baseball. We'll see you on Monday. So long, everybody.